Start this evening's proceedings, so candidates are all seated at their table. The candidates are sitting in their order of speaking. We're going to draw to decide the order of speaking. I want to welcome you all here and thank you for coming. This evening is sponsored by the local media, news media, Revelstoke Review, Revelstoke Current, The Mountaineer, Easy Rock, Rev Ed, and Stoke FM. Thank them for that. I just want to introduce the candidates in alphabetical order. Representing the Green Party, Samson Boyer. And the Liberal Party, Doug Clovechok. Independent candidate, Justin Hooles. Independent candidate, Duncan MacLeod. And New Democratic candidate, Gerry Taft. The order of business will be that each of the candidates will have 3 minutes for their introductory remarks. After that, there'll be a number of questions addressed to all the candidates, and they'll each have 2 minutes to answer the questions. There'll be 1 minute for rebuttals near the end, and 2 minutes for each candidate to wrap up at the end of the rebuttals. And the reverse order will take place for the wrap-ups, reverse to what the opening order. We have a timekeeper, Sean, at the back there with his red, yellow, and green lights. And the yellow light will come on when the candidates have 30 seconds left to do whatever section of the program they're addressing. And the cutoff time will be exactly what it's supposed to be. That's all. And I just want to remind candidates that the forum is an opportunity for them to present themselves and their respective parties' positions. And I'm sure we'll have a nice, cordial evening going on here. Then, without further ado, we will go into the candidates' opening remarks, and number 1 will be Duncan MacLeod. You want to come? The mic, the mic right there, and you can stand if you wish, or you can sit, whichever you prefer.
Do we automatically use the mic?
Yes, you'll need to use the mic.
Yeah, you'll need to use the mic.
For sure, you'll need to use the mic. And you can see. Can you see the light? Okay, back there where Sean is.
Yes, I can.
Okay.
I'm green.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Turn it on, please.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Hello? Keep it right close. Okay. My name's Duncan MacLeod. I'm from Kimberley. In terms of a little bit of background about how I came to be sitting at this table tonight, I was born and raised there. Graduated from Selkirk Secondary School. Following that, I went to university in Calgary, and I went there with the intention of doing this. And then I didn't do it for 25 years. I studied history and political science. I learned a lot, but what I learned ultimately was dissuading and disengaging. I was a youth delegate to the Liberal Leadership Convention in 1990 that ultimately selected Jean Chrétien. And that experience, not exclusively, but in no small part, was the impetus for me to walk away from this. And this was, something I thought I wanted to do with my life. And I was so disappointed in what I discovered about partisan politics and what I discovered about our governmental institutions and how they worked, that I haven't been involved since. In fact, I've never even been to one of these. I have no idea what's going to happen here tonight other than what they've told me about since I arrived. I'm really looking forward to engaging the process of communicating my message and also of interacting with and even supporting the other candidates, because I do have tremendous respect for anyone and everyone who does this. This is not easy. But at the same time, I really do feel that the way we do it is counterproductive. So the overarching theme of my campaign is going to be democracy reform, not just campaign finance reform, which I know is on vogue in our province right now, as it should be, but electoral reform and actual institutional reform. My feeling is, and again, the overarching motivation behind me sitting here is that the entire system is broken and it needs to be fixed as soon as possible. In terms of my motivation for that, I am married to my wonderful wife, Crystal, who's videoing me with the pink phone. I have 5 kids. I live in Kimberley now after spending most of the 90s and early 2000s living in a variety of places. And I think that experience of being from here and connected to here in combination with having left here. I've lived and worked in Japan, in South America. I've lived in and worked in multiple provinces in addition to BC, Alberta, and Ontario. That will give me, I think, a unique insight into some of the comparative contexts that are going to be very revealing in this campaign. I've experienced multiple healthcare systems, multiple education systems. I've seen different ways of doing things that we do well, but we can do better. I'm looking forward to an energetic campaign. I'm a latecomer to this one, and I appreciate you all coming out tonight to hear what everybody has to say.
Good evening.
Go ahead, Gerry.
Am I jumping the gun here? Am I eager? All right, good evening. My name is Gerry Taft. I'm currently the mayor in Invermere, and I've been serving on Invermere Council since 2002. When I was elected to council, I was 20 years old. This means several things. First of all, the folks in Invermere were brave enough to elect me when I was 20. And secondly, it means I've actually been doing it for a while. It's been 15 years that I've been serving in local government. Throughout that time, I've also run a number of small businesses. I just recently sold my main small business, which is Gerry's Gelati in Invermere, so I could focus more time and attention to politics. So throughout that time, what I've discovered is, and I know this because I'm born and raised in the Kootenays, is that we live in an incredible place. We live in a place that has so much opportunity, has so many things going for it. And we all find ways to carve out and make a living and make this our home. But what I've also discovered in 15 years of local government is that there are challenges. There are real issues right now. Far too often we're concerned with our services being cut or being centralized. We're concerned with losing the fabric of our community. And when local communities come together and come up with innovative ideas and come up with solutions, we often face a provincial government which simply says no, which doesn't seem interested in working for us and seems more interested in representing the wealthy and the well-connected. Ladies and gentlemen, we only get one voice in Victoria. We need to make sure that that voice is a strong one. We need to make sure that that voice represents our values. Values like respecting local decision-making, not making a fake town in Jumbo and trying to shove a ski resort down our throats that we don't want. Not one that says we have to leave our communities and go work in camps, that's the only option for employment. Not one that says it's acceptable that we have to travel vast distances to get basic health care. Those aren't our values. Our values include things that are important for our future, things like the environment and our children. Those things are not costs. Those are things that we need to protect and that we need to invest in. We shouldn't be selling our democracy to the highest bidder and selling it at $10,000 plate dinners. And we shouldn't be accepting that the status quo is all we deserve. I have the experience, I have the passion, and I have the values to be your next MLA. On May 9th, I would like your support. Please vote for Gerry Taft and the BC NDP.
Yeah, that's it. Okay.
All right, so my name is Justin Hooles, and I'm running as an independent. I'm currently working as a commercial flat roofer, and that's after going through quite a few different job choices. I spent some time as a behavioral interventionist working with autistic children. I very seriously considered this as a long-term career, but my family was having a lot of trouble back at home, and I chose to kind of sacrifice the line of work that I had and come back home, which brought me to working at Walmart for a short period of time. And when I was working at Walmart, I started to move up management, thinking that, hey, I could make something out of this. If you get into the big management in Walmart, they pay some big dollars, but I pretty quickly learned that that's not a path that I wanted to be a part of, and just seeing some of the things that they had to do and some of the things that they do to make money, and how the bottom line, of course, at the end of the day is money, and just how far that reached really brought me away from that. So I ended up leaving Walmart rather depressed and a little let down, thinking that I didn't know what I was going to do. I started working as a commercial flat roofer. It was an honest job. I liked it enough. I mean, I don't particularly like the work. I prefer to work with my brain than with my hands, but it gets me by, it makes me a good living. So I went on from there and started to get involved in politics and started to really follow where it was going. And the last federal election, I chose to get involved with one of the parties and really see where everything went and where it all came from. And as I got more involved with the party, I started to see some things that I liked, but some things that I really didn't like. And when it came to the small communities and realistically anything that's not an issue that affects everybody as a whole, I don't feel that the parties necessarily do a very good job of representing. So that led me to go and start looking at other options. When this election came up, I started to try and make a choice. And I decided basically by New Year's I had to decide if I was going to run in this election or not. And on New Year's Eve, I finally made up my mind and decided that the only real reason I wouldn't do it is because I was nervous and a little scared to do it. And I decided that wasn't a good reason. So I cast that aside and decided to start planning for it. So the more I got into it, the more I thought that I'm probably doing the right thing. You start looking at the BC voting history over the last 4 years, and you see that only 2 votes have been cast outside of party lines over the last 4 years, and all of them were, both of them were from the Liberals. Not once did the NDP vote against their own party, and I have a very, very hard time believing that the NDP has never disagreed with something that's going on. I want to be an MLA who's going to deliver honest information to people and collect an honest opinion from the community. I have some plans to do this through a couple different methods, an online forum. Doug actually had the original idea, and I'm not afraid to admit I stole it from him, but there's
It's a compliment.
having an advisory council from all the different cities, and I hope to be able to get elected and be able to represent you guys all. Thank you.
Samson Boyer, representing the Green Party.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd first like to thank you all for coming out. It's great to see so many people interested in hearing about the party candidates as well as the independents. I grew up in Fairmont Hot Springs, just south of Revelstoke. I have lived my full 17 years here. Born in America, but I prefer it out here in all honesty. And when I originally started looking at politics years ago, I'm a fat, young guy, I'll grant you, but I'm truly committed to seeing change. At the moment, people do not feel like that their government is listening to them. We have the highest too low? There we go. Thank you. We have the highest unemployment rate in BC, this region. Well-paying jobs are hard to find, and it's becoming harder and harder for people to buy even a down payment on a house. It takes 16 years, 2 people working hard, day-to-day jobs, just to get a down payment. I believe that the Green Party can bring real change. Granted, I'm young. I'm inexperienced. I think I'm certainly the youngest person here, perhaps even in the audience. But I am committed to seeing change. I, along with all the other young people, are the next generation. as we have an aging population, it'll be up to us to take care of. You guys, sorry. It'll be up to you guys. It'll be up to us to ensure that you get proper care. And I believe that a youth voice should be heard, especially since I'm only 18. We need to see change. And if we're going to need change if we want to keep the young people in this region. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody, and I'm going to not hide behind this desk. Pleased to be here tonight, and I want to congratulate all my colleagues up here, especially these two young ones. It takes courage to stand in front of people, and they've got a lot of courage. And Samson's my neighbor just down the road, so we're a big fan of Samson and Justin as well. He's doing a great job. For me tonight, it's not my first time being here. I ran in the last election, as many of you know, and came close, but that only counts in grenades and horseshoes. But we learned a lot from that experience, and through this experience, and we've also handed out to you, this is kind of like a job interview here tonight, and I've got a lot of potential employers here, but we handed out a resume to you, and I encourage you to have a look at that, because I've got a lifetime of experience that is very applicable to this particular job. And so I encourage you to look at that. Since the last election, I haven't quit. I've worked really, really hard throughout the entire Columbia River Revelstoke, which is one of the largest geographic regions in politics in British Columbia. So, working here in Revelstoke, I've been in Revelstoke a lot. I've been to 6 hook and bullet rod and gun club dinners right here in this thing. I've made an effort to know this community. I know what goes on in this community. I know your issues in this community. And I've been able also over that time period to help with some of those issues. Issues like the Trans-Canada Highway, working with your mayor. Issues like the helipad. We just were able to secure $50,000 to push that over the top for the folks here in Revelstoke, because it's really, really important. So I've been able to work and get to know you guys. And my wife Susan's here, and when we come to Revelstoke, we love it because we become friends with a lot of people in this community. And even if you don't vote for me, I've met people who I've become very, very close to. They just don't believe in what we believe in, but they're really nice people. So I just want to say that I've had that experience over the last 4 years. We've worked really, really hard to achieve some things. And I'm not elected. I'm not a career politician. I'm not. So we've been able to accomplish a lot of stuff over that time. And I got to also tell you, folks, I'm really proud to stand here tonight as a BC Liberal. And the reason is that we've accomplished something that no other province in Canada has. We are the #1 leading economy in this country. No other province comes close to us. We've had 5 consecutive balanced budgets. Nobody comes close to that. We have maintained our AAA credit rating. That's so important to working with infrastructure and so on and so forth. We are the leading province in this country when it comes to even the services that we provide to people. So I want you to think tonight, and I'm going to ask you to think tonight about what you hear, because as we go through this, it's going to be really important that we talk about all the good things that are going on, and you should be very proud of what's happening in this province. Thank you.
So now we move into the question time, and it's 2 minutes for each question. And we will start off, we'll be rolling through, starting the first speaker will change each time as we move down the table. And the first question is, if selected, and this is to all candidates, if selected, how will you ensure that you maintain a meaningful connection with your voters? How will you maintain a relationship that reflects representation of the issues that your constituents deem to be the most important on a local, regional, and provincial level, and not simply reflect the party line? We start with Duncan MacLeod.
Yeah, we're not rotating?
We're going to rotate it next time.
I think that this is, I I guess a juxtaposed question for me, because as an independent, it's fairly easy not to toe the party line. The whole reason I am an independent is I don't want to toe the party line. I have, as I said, as an overarching theme of why I'm running, and throughout the night I will revisit this repeatedly. I have identified in my own life, in my studies, in my experience of living in this great province and in this wonderful country as the ultimate issue we all have to face, and soon, as partisan politics. So in terms of maintaining a connection, this is an amazing, amazing riding. From Revelstoke through Golden to Invermere and Kimberley, I've got the good fortune of having a job that allows me to work in and connect with the people of all 4 communities. Now, the human resources that are here need to be leveraged. We have absolutely amazing people, people who, like many of us, were born and raised here, and people who have migrated here because of the quality of the communities, the amazing location we live in. Those people need to be heard, and in the type of democratic system that I'm proposing, that I'm envisioning for this province and this country, that's what will happen in a consensus model. So when we're talking again about reform, and we're talking about next steps for a province moving into an actual 21st century system of government that's reflective of changes in technology, of a more informed population, as we continue through the night, I'll continue to discuss how that will look and what that will work like under consociational or consensus influenced democratic process.
Yeah, so very good question. One of the things that I am bringing to the table is some of the good work that Norm MacDonald has done over the last 12 years. And I feel really blessed to have him as a mentor and to be able to connect with him and get advice. And I think that him and his team, including the staff that has worked with him, as well as a lot of volunteers who worked really hard over the last several elections to get him elected, have done a really good job. And I think he's reached out, he's been very accessible to the public. And so that's the foundation or the base of how to connect with people. And I would like to take that good work and go even further. My experience being a local government politician means you're very accessible. You're at the grocery store, post office, anywhere, your place of work. You're constantly asking questions. And that's something I'm comfortable with and look forward to doing in this role. And I do think it's important to travel the entire riding and be seen in all of the communities. And that's something I would look forward to doing. As far as some of the bigger picture aspects, electoral reform, the BC NDP is supportive of going to a referendum on proportional representation and looking at changing the model that's in place right now. And although it's not directly related to the question, I think it's significant. BC NDP is talking about banning big money, getting rid of the corporate and the union donations, full stop. Just take the money out of politics. Let's let the political parties fund themselves through personal donations, and let's make politics more about people. And I think that changes the game significantly, and then people are answering the phone calls from constituents, not from donors.
All right, I'm going to talk a little bit more about something I already started on then. I want to create an online forum, and this is part of modernizing how the constituency office is going to relate to constituents. And I think within that online forum, we need to have infrastructure projects that are ongoing and people who are looking for funding, so that we'll be able to look at them and make sure that they're applying for all grants possible, and that their grants, their applications are being done properly and they're being done well, so that they have the best chance of being successful. Along with that, I would like to see a spot for businesses in there to be able to talk about any struggles that they're having, because our government actually has a lot of programs already existent that could help a lot of our small businesses. and they don't really tend to know about it. And the more that I go around to businesses, the more you see that there's a lot of programs that they are not touching on, and they haven't been educated properly on. And I would also like to have it so that there's an area to debate anything that's currently going through the Legislative Assembly, and this would allow people to really connect with what's going on and be able to connect with what your MLA is doing and be able to take part in that discussion. I would also like to make sure that they're able to vote on certain issues. If it's unclear where the community stands, I would like to be able to give it a non-binding vote so that people can go and give me a really good idea of where the community does stand on it and whether or not we have a strong majority in either direction. I would like it to be able to talk about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and explain why I'm voting the way that I'm voting, so that you guys always at least have that explanation, if nothing else. And I've commented previously on the advisory committee, which would be the more personal side of that, and making sure that everybody gets a chance to share all their thoughts with me. And I think that's basically my time.
I believe that any MLA should think of the constituents first before the party. And that's what I'm going to do if you decide to elect me. I believe that the one and major job of an MLA is listening to you guys. It's incredibly Sorry for that freeze. We need to work together. I love what Justin is suggesting. Sorry, it's yes, it should be about the constituents and not the party. Thank you. I've lost my place.
Good job, Samson. It's tough. It's tough up here, but good job. So, for me, being an MLA, non-elected MLA for the last 4 years, it's about people. And it's about working with people. And I campaigned on this last time, and I'm going to campaign on it this time. And I have been campaigning on it. This is the largest riding in our Kootenay area anyways, and also in the Shuswap area. We need to set up a way for people to communicate. And what I will do is two things. I campaigned on it last time, and I'm doing it again this, as I just mentioned. I will set up advisory boards in each one of these communities that will advise the MLA on current issues and hold my feet to the fire. One of the problems I had with the last MLA is there's no accountability to anything that was being done. I need to be accountable to you. So we need to set some goals and objectives outside of just the regular MLA business. And push that movement forward so that we actually can accomplish something together. And I think that's really important. I just want to reference very quickly, and I know this time's going to go by fairly fast, my colleague over here who mentioned funding and big business funding. I just want to tell you for a fact that doesn't happen with the BC Liberals. We are the only ones, no, hang on, and you laugh, just hang on, you laugh, and you think it's funny, and that's fine. But as you laugh about that, we're the only ones that in real time, you can find out who donated to us, real time. Go on our website and you'll see there. John Horgan, his leader took $750,000, or close to $700,000, which is the largest donation in the history of British Columbia politics, from the United Steelworkers of America. So don't throw rocks when you live in a glass house, is what I'm going to say to that issue.
Thank you, Doug. The next question. The federal government intends to legalize marijuana by July 2018. Yet it is allowing provincial governments control over how it is used and sold. How do you think BC should regulate the future sale and use of marijuana once it is legalized? And we'll start off with Gerry Taft.
Thank you. So I think first and foremost, the provincial government needs to do meaningful consultations with communities and with municipalities. We know with most services, whether it's emergency services, policing, fire, all kinds of services, addiction services, most of these are community-based and they directly impact local governments and they directly impact all of you. And for the provincial government to announce some sort of framework or do something without consultation would be extremely unfair. So it's very necessary to do meaningful consultation and to get the input of people on what should happen. My hope is that there will be tax revenue which will help to fund local services, that we will be able to reinvest in our local communities, and that we will be able to find a way of dealing with and implementing legalized marijuana in a way that also enriches our communities and makes life better in British Columbia.
Justin?
Okay, well, I also would like to see tax revenue, but I think that it's important that we look at what the goal of this is, which is to destroy the black market for it. And if we overtax it, we're not going to see that happen. So we do need to be careful to see that that becomes a thing, and we should be looking at jobs out of this. We should be looking at what we can do to make the most money out of the legalization of marijuana. As far as I'm concerned, that's the biggest benefit of this happening is we're going to be able to get some revenue. And the NDP, I guess, has vaguely suggested that they want to see it in the BC liquor store, and I don't support that. I would like to see it create a separate establishment, and for the sake of creating more jobs, and more jobs that we desperately need around here. There's a few other things that fall into provincial jurisdiction. There's a legal age. I think 19 would most likely be that age, but I know there's a bit of a talk for 25 for certain medical reasons. I would like to make sure that it's not present in public spaces, mainly those that are occupied by children, such as parks, any high traffic area, downtown areas, things like that. I'm not necessarily saying you got to stop the guy on the sidewalk for smoking a joint, but if he's sitting in the middle of the park around children, then obviously we need to regulate that end of things. I think that's all I have to say right now.
Here's one I have an answer for, thankfully. For one thing, yes, there will be an incredible boom for tax revenue, of which should definitely go to public spending. But we also need to consider that it goes towards addiction treatment, as well as education on drugs. We need to support mom and pa businesses. Now, put up your hand here if you like craft beer. Yeah? Yeah, that's good. I think we should have the same with marijuana. We should have craft marijuana. Grown and made locally and produced by locals. As for getting it off the black market, we shouldn't overtax it, of course. And I, of course, believe that everyone should have a voice in this matter. But it's going to be legal. I think that's a fight that's pretty much over. And now it's just a matter of the benefits that we can claim. Oh, and one quick fun fact. The CBD in marijuana is shown in many in many studies that it heals bones twice as fast and makes them even stronger than they were before. So definitely consider trying.
Thanks for that, Samson. Hope there's no RCMP in the audience tonight. Anyway, very important issue for the province of British Columbia, very important issue for my party. It's going to be legalized. It's a federal government jurisdiction, and they're going to do it. So instead of sitting back and waiting for something to happen, we have been very proactive on this front. The Premier has made it very, very clear that the number one issue for us as a party is to make sure it's kept out of the hands of children. We have to protect our kids from this. It's going to happen, so we've got to be really, really sure of that. And we have to also make very, very sure, the second point is that it does not go into the criminal element. So gangs and guns, we've got a program associated with that. There's bad guys out there that are going to take advantage of it. So we got to make sure that it does indeed happen. I think Mr. Taft's been reading from my playbook, because the Premier has already committed to setting up a panel of experts, in quotes, to do this decision making. The government shouldn't be involved in this. It should be people in British Columbia. So that has already been put in place. She's made it very clear of that. As far as any revenue from taxes go, because we will tax this, there's no question about it. She's made it very clear that the revenue from anything that is taxed for marijuana will go directly to supporting addictions and supporting those kinds of melodies. So we are very much aware of this, and again, I go back to saying to you, the number one priority for us as a government is to keep this away from kids. That's our priority.
I think I like going first better. There's almost nothing left to say. A couple of major concerns I have with this are things that are evolving in jurisdictions where marijuana has already been legalized. So whether we're looking at Colorado, Washington State, there are issues with things like driving under the influence. How do you test for THC? Okay. How long does THC stay in your system? Are you still under the influence if you used a marijuana product 2-3 days before? How did the person be determined which is which? One of the things Colorado is experiencing, for anyone who's aware of the de facto case study that's taking place with legalization there, is increase in car accidents and deaths from it's been documented, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm in favor of legalization. I think for all the reasons that were mentioned, there's no point in stigmatizing it. There's no point in driving usage underground. There is a need for a consultative process. I don't know that it's necessarily needs to be focused on grassroots so much as the people in our society, these human resources I talked about before, who are best able to support us in determining what's going to be safest. So whether it's doctors, whether it's social workers, whether it's healthcare providers, whether it's people with WorkSafe and a WCB, because there are issues with this as well. If you're driving a forklift or driving a truck, there's lots to be worked out. And the federal government has set a very ambitious timeline, and the provinces need to be very aware of all the potential ripples as they move forward. One thing I would like to see is, in echoing Justin, but for a different reason, it shouldn't be sold in liquor stores. I think we're looking at two very, very different products here. One that's medicinal, as Samson pointed out, and has potential health benefits, and one that does not in terms of alcohol. And I think if people are dealing with addiction issues and trying to recover, it's not a good idea to have both in the same place.
The next question. Southern mountain caribou are listed as threatened under the Federal Species at Risk Act, and the scientists have recommended their status be changed to endangered. What are your views on the management of mountain caribou? We'll start with Justin.
Okay, well, first of all, I do agree that they should be listed as endangered, and I think that would be a good first step. Obviously, we need to put some money aside for them, and I think right now our BC Liberals have already committed to that. I think $28 million, but I'm running off the top of my head here, looking at Doug.
That's ambitious, but we'll take it.
I think it's what they said, actually. It's $28 million in their platform. But I obviously would support those efforts to do that, and amongst that, there's other issues and other animals who are having trouble, and a lot of our elk and other species are falling in the numbers of their population, and I would like to see that helped as well. And I think, honestly, the BC Liberals are a little bit off to a good start there, but I would really like to hear a lot more of a commitment on who's going to be involved in their all-group committee there. If it's going to be just hunters, there's a lot of concern around that, and certainly the parties have scrutinized that very heavily, that if this group is going to be strictly full of hunters or just one side of an issue and they're not involving everybody, then this group is not going to be effective and it's not going to make the right choices. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes, and I'm really hoping to see it go the right way. And I think that's all I have to say for that.
This is a very important topic, especially for the Green Party. At the moment, the Green Party is trying to enact the Endangered Species Act, which at the moment we have 15,000 species endangered but are not considered to be. So we need to make steps in this direction. We also need to increase funding across the board for wildlife. At the moment, we only have 2 conservation officers stretching all the way from Revelstoke down to Kimberley. That is unacceptable. We also have the lowest funding in supporting our wildlife throughout in BC. I'm a hunter myself. I understand, but I understand what hunters want. We want to ensure that wildlife remains abundant so we can continue to hunt it. But sorry, I'm a little new at this, sorry. We need to increase funding and especially increase research. As for the elk populations, what do they call it? Mountain caribous. Thank you. I've heard, now I'll need to confirm this later, but we have caribou ranches where we take pregnant females, bring them into a safe enclosure, let them have their calves, and then release them back into the wild once they are proper age. We need to continue to support this to save and ensure the species does not go extinct. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much. It's a big question, and it's a complicated question. Our government has committed a lot of money towards this already, and I see there's a biologist that I had a great opportunity to meet with yesterday in the audience tonight, and we had a good conversation about not only mountain caribou but other ungulates. We are struggling. I think this wildlife management process, because taking care of caribou is about wildlife management. It's just not about taking care of caribou. I don't point a finger at my party. I don't point a finger at the NDP. I think this is an issue that has been around for the last 30 years. It goes back to the Socreds. Certainly not their fault, but it's an issue that to me is important. I'm a hunter as well. But being a hunter, I'm also a conservationist by nature. So when we see the cow-calf populations, especially with elk, dropping throughout the East Kootenays, there's a serious issue here. And what we've done as a government is we have committed that we will establish, don't know what it looks like, don't know what it's going to talk like. British Columbians are going to decide on this, and to Justin's point, it's going to be inclusive of biologists, it's going to be inclusive of everybody. But like the Freshwater Fish Society, all tags, all those things, hunting, trapping, will go into this commission. That'll add about a $9 million bill, which is about another 50% more than now. But the BC Liberal government has also committed $5 million to get this thing started up. So we have an opportunity collectively throughout this region to take care of our wildlife, which includes caribou. And I thank you. I'm sorry I forgot your name, but thank you for your passion yesterday, because it's people like you that we need on that particular commission or committee or whatever you want to call it. So thank you for your insight yesterday. I appreciated that.
In terms of wildlife management, I think that the discussions that are already underway are productive. I think they're reactive, unfortunately, and I think at the end of the day, it's symptomatic of again, the overarching theme I'm here to talk about. We have a system that is bogged down in adversarial debate, in conduct, and that's more focused on detriment to the opposition than it is on productivity for the people. And you know, this is an important issue, but in the grander scheme of the umbrella I'm talking about, it's a microcosm for everything that we need to be looking at. We need to be looking at a system where the people come first, the province comes first. Okay, and if you think about any other aspect of society, any other collaborative enterprise that we undertake, nothing looks like this. Nothing works in this way in terms of this adversarial nature. We don't run our families this way. Mom doesn't dispute everything Dad says and try to pick it apart. Dad doesn't counter with why it works that way, and he thinks he's right. We don't do that on boards. It's not always this line or this line. It's people working together to come up with policy that's productive and in the best interest of everyone involved. And that's, again, why I'm sitting here. These things we're talking about don't ever need to get to the point that they're at. And it is sad. I'm not a hunter myself, but a lot of my friends are. I grew up, as I said, in this region. And it's disappointing. And it's symptomatic, as I said, of an overall disappointment that I have in a whole bunch of these issues even being issues.
So there's a lot of people that have put a lot of time and effort into some evidence-based plans, the mountain caribou recovery plans that are out there. There's a lot of information that needs to be implemented. Simply put, a wolf call in and of itself is not going to solve the problem. If there is not a serious effort to look at habitat and to control some of the resource extraction and take this seriously, then absolutely the caribou are going to be extinct very soon. And we can't simplify this as simply being a predator issue. This is a habitat issue. And that is also relevant for the rest of wildlife in British Columbia and our Crown land. It's being neglected. It's been neglected for the last 16 years. And the question that I have for everyone in this room is, who do you trust to actually do something different? Do you trust the people that have been neglecting it for the last 16 years, that they're suddenly going to change? Or are you going to trust someone that's coming forward with some new ideas? The NDP also supports using the hunting tags and using this money, but what we're not proposing to do is shuffle it off to, for example, the BC Wildlife Federation and put it to one group, and let's make all the decisions only based on one group's interests. Wildlife, Crown land, these things belong to all of us, and we need to look at all of the sectors and all of the impacts, and not look at things just on one species, but look at the entire ecosystem and make sure that it is comprehensive and that it involves consultation. And some of the points that were raised earlier, absolutely we need to hire more conservation officers, and we need to be more serious about our land. And it's getting a little off topic, but the other thing is that allowing resource companies, logging companies, mining companies to self-regulate and is not working, and we need to stop that.
Next question is, what's your position on the future of the softwood lumber agreement with the United States? And we'll start with Samson.
The softwood lumber debate is an incredibly difficult issue for us to solve provincially. It's going to have to deal with trading with the states, which is seemingly to become a more difficult task as time goes by. What we need to consider is, as we're going through these trade deals, we need to consider BC workers and what kind of products we are shipping out. At the moment, over the last 20 years, under both Liberal and NDP, we have lost over 45,000 jobs directly related to the mills. 100 mills have been shut down in 20 years. And yet, raw log export has gone up. We are not adding any value to the products that we are shipping out. What we need to do is to reevaluate the negotiation, have strong green leaders, such as Andrew Weaver, leading us through this debate, who will stand up for BC and its people. Thank you.
Well, again, another very complicated issue. 60,000 British Columbians work in this industry. 60,000 families work in this industry. It's incredibly important that we do it. I visited the mill yesterday. 250 some odd people work in that industry here in Revelstoke. They're not going to camps. They're working right here in Revelstoke in a very, very lucrative way. Donald Trump is an interesting man, to say the least. And his protectionist statements this morning should bring cause for concern. And what I can tell you that the BC Liberal government and our Premier has already started to be very proactive on it. We have a very good relationship with the federal government. She's appointed David Emerson, who is a past CEO of a logging company, to be the BC emissary to the United States. We're being very proactive when it comes to this because we're wanting to fight for jobs. Take care of the families, take care of the people that we love. We have to fight the Americans. Now, another in that sense, right? But I'll tell you something else that's really important, is that we have been able to diversify this lumber industry outside of the United States. 2,000% up China. We've been exporting our logs to China. We have been diversifying our economy around that so that we're not dependent solely on the American market. And I can tell you, my Premier, my leader, is ready for a scrap with Mr. Trump. Mr. Horgan is on the record saying, it's over, it's a done deal. NAFTA, we give up. My Premier doesn't give up on the workers of British Columbia.
I'm going to sound like a broken record. For me, this is another microcosm, another issue that's reflective of the overall problem we have. When you look at what we're doing with one hand and what we're doing with the other hand, because of the partisan nature of how we move forward. So the Liberals, and ultimately I think that I'll be consistent with the other candidates in saying that this is not something that can be solved at the provincial level exclusively or ultimately. But if you look at what happens, the federal government makes deals. The opposition says don't make the deal. They push back because it's political. They don't want to be seen to lose face, and nobody ever works together collaboratively, constructively to come up with the best possible solution for the people that they're serving. We talk about free trade. We talk about fair trade. We don't have reasonable, rational, inspired trade. Think about what's happening when we're exporting these raw logs to China. And we're talking about everything from taxing carbon to environmental protection in multiple ways and at multiple levels, and we're doing things at the same time that make no sense. Putting raw logs on a ship, sending it all the way across the ocean, and who knows how many thousands of liters of fuel, having it refined into whatever products we're going to buy back in a country with lower environmental standards than we have, lower wages than we have. And we're saying on the one hand we're being protective of our environment and our workers, and on the other hand we're doing something exactly opposite. It literally is ludicrous what is happening because of the nature of how we're doing these things.
So one of the unfortunate things that has happened is I think over the last couple of years, Christy Clark was too busy getting photographed at taxpayers' expenses and didn't negotiate a softwood lumber deal. The Canadian government has delegated the negotiation of the softwood lumber to the province of British Columbia. Nothing's happened. Now we have Trump. And I got to be honest, I'm not holding a lot of faith that until Trump's impeached, which hopefully happens sooner rather than later, it's going to be a tough go on any kind of meaningful negotiation because he doesn't know what he's doing. But what is important and what the BC NDP is putting forward is that we should be developing and using more of BC wood in BC, and that we should be using that in public buildings and infrastructure when we're building affordable housing, when we're looking at hospitals and long-term care homes, all kinds of facilities. We should be using BC wood when possible, and we should be getting serious about value added, getting serious about secondary manufacturing. Over the BC Liberal tenure, raw log exports have gone up 500%. How does that mean? How is that world leading? How is that at a sustainable economy? The BC Liberals have removed the connection between tenure and local milling. So that allows the 100 mills to close and the 30,000 jobs to be lost. Those things are absolutely unacceptable. Some of the solutions going forward, these are our logs, this is our timber. We should be having more community forests. Revelstoke, I believe, has a very successful community forest, and it's a model across BC. There should be more of those. This should be a resource which we benefit from locally, which creates employment locally, not something that belongs to multinational corporations that frankly don't care about the local communities.
Gallery, I would also like to see us start planning for some slower times. I think that it's realistic that we're going to be losing some money in this upcoming year and probably years to come as we fight this issue. And right now our budget actually doesn't reflect that at all. It suggests that everything's going to be fine and we're actually going to see an increase in the normal increase in the amount of money coming out of logging. And I think that that's completely unrealistic to think that, and we have to start looking at what this is going to mean for our province and start planning for that. I do think that finding new trade partners for the time being is certainly a priority. We need to keep those jobs. We need to keep people working. Obviously, working with or working to promote BC wood being used in projects is a big deal and a big opportunity. There's a lot of things happening that way. There's tall wood building. If you look that up on Google, you'd see it. But basically, it's trying to make it so that we can build taller buildings. They built some that are 7 stories, some that are even a little bit higher than that. And they're all made out of wood, and that's a new ability for us. And for us to promote that, we'll be able to use it and create more jobs and keep the jobs that are currently going. I think we need to sit down with the forestry industry right now, and we need to talk about what's going on, and we need to talk about what they would like to see to be able to continue keeping their jobs and keeping them working. Yeah, thank you.
The next question is, how do you see healthcare evolving to meet the increasing needs of an aging population? Start with Doug.
Well, needless to say, that's a big question. And we have, in British Columbia, made record investments in healthcare. Since the last time, I think around 2000, we've opened 7 new hospitals. We've opened 10 new towers. So we've spent an enormous amount of revenue and resources on healthcare. I had an opportunity to meet with seniors this morning, and it's a huge issue for them. There's no question about it. But I'll tell you what we really need to understand is that in order for us to have a good, healthy healthcare program and healthcare system, we have to have a strong economy. We have to have the ability to make money and in a responsible way, but so we can promote these programs for seniors and for children. I'm going to give you a personal example of how effective our healthcare system is that good friends of ours, their little 7-year-old boy has childhood leukemia. He's in the Children's Hospital in Vancouver. The care that young man has gotten is beyond comparison. We have one of the best healthcare systems anywhere in this country, perhaps anywhere in this world. And if you have had an opportunity to, good or bad, I mean, I had a hip replacement. Played hockey. That was one of the things that happens to you when that goes. But best care I've ever had. So we've got to continually invest in healthcare, and we're doing that. And we also have to have the kind of economy that supports a good, strong healthcare system. So that's what the BC Liberals have done, and that's what we continue to do, and my time is up.
I fundamentally disagree with that. I think we have the best healthcare workers in the world. I think we have amazing people working at every level of our healthcare system. As someone who is experienced as a subscriber to other healthcare systems, I've lived in Japan, as I mentioned earlier, for 3 years. We went through 2 pregnancies there. I've lived in South America. I've also subscribed to the healthcare systems in Alberta and Ontario in addition to ours. I don't think it serves any purpose to wave what is an easily waved flag for Canadians and say we have it better than anyone else when we don't. There are lots of things that are wrong here, and I think most people here know that or know someone who's experienced that, and it can and should be better. And we have to get our heads out of the sand on this because we are at a tipping point demographically, and I think we're also at a tipping point philosophically. We have to start thinking about creative solutions. healthcare costs are our number one liability as a citizenry, and they don't have to be that way. We have to start looking at these costs and saying, how can we leverage these as resources? You know, I work in an aspect and element of our society and our system that does that. I work in international education. Education is a service. It's the second biggest expense we have as citizens in this province, but we've also managed to leverage a synergy there with international students entering into our schools. International students come here, they bring revenue, they also bring experience and exposure for our kids to new cultures, different languages, different ways of learning. If you've ever seen these kids in a classroom with our kids, and they're doing calculus differently, they're talking about physics in different ways. This is an example of a leverageable synergy. Those opportunities exist in healthcare as well. We have to start thinking about who and how we can serve our citizenry at the same time generating revenue.
Thanks. I was agreeing with most of that until I heard generating revenue. I don't agree with that at all. But the NDP has got some really exciting pieces on healthcare. First and foremost, a real plan to eliminate MSP premiums. Some of the other really important pieces, and I think this is really relevant to Revelstoke, is to invest and improve and maybe even completely redo the BC Ambulance Service and paramedics, and to put some money into that, and to treat paramedics like they should be treated, which is healthcare professionals. They deserve full-time work, they deserve to be properly funded, and we rely on their services. It's so crucial and it's so important. There's also some other very tangible things, reducing the cost of prescription drugs. We have a plan around that. Additional supports and subsidies for travel when people have to travel from rural areas to receive more services in healthcare. And focusing on a relationship-based residential care, making sure that those that are in residential care are receiving proper support, that those facilities are properly staffed and properly managed, and that we're not seeing our elderly people being abused or mistreated. Another really exciting piece that BC NDP is really proud of is to bring in local BC food into hospitals and into long-term care homes. This is an economic generator. This is something that can improve health. It's just logical. Why are we shipping frozen crap from Kelowna to all of the hospitals in this region? It makes no sense at all. Finally, the last point is BC NDP would like to create a new ministry that is focused on mental health and addictions, and to put some meaningful supports and focus on things both proactively but also dealing with current crisis. Thank you.
One of the big changes I would like to see for our medical system is I would like to see a national pharmacare program, and our federal government is talking about this, and I would like to see the province get involved and try and help make sure that that happens. A national pharmacare system could save the entire country $11.4 billion on the cost of drugs, bringing them down for everybody. On top of that, I would like to see more palliative care and more home care. This can take away from a lot of what the doctors have to deal with, and deal with a lot of issues a little more proactively, along with allowing more comfort in the home and allowing people to stay in their home a lot longer. I'm also very concerned about transportation costs. I've definitely talked to quite a few people in certain areas, especially where getting to the doctor is not a very easy thing for you to do. And some of the seniors in Invermere, I mean, for them, a lot of the time they have to go to Cranbrook, and there is no plan for them to get to Cranbrook. They just have to figure it out. As I was told, they have to depend on their friends, which doesn't work so great when your friends are also retired people living in the same home. I would like to see us invest a little more in paramedics and make sure that people are getting response times appropriately and getting responded to quickly, especially in rural areas. And for certain areas within our riding, that's a bit of a concern here in Revelstoke. Last thing I want to say is I don't want to see the MSP end up my taxes. So if that's the plan, then I'm not on board with that. A lot of people's employers are paying for the MSP right now, and I do not.
We're going to work and focus on mental health and addiction. We're going to, and here we're going to step away from the bunch here. We're going to work on We're going to work on getting more long-term beds. We need to shrink the waiting list. At the moment, it takes days, if not weeks, for someone who needs serious care to get on the proper list. As well as we need an integrated model of care, collecting your pharmacist, your doctor, your family doctor, your nurse, bringing them all together, working together. Thank you.
And the next question. BC is the only province in Canada without a poverty reduction plan. Is your party ready to adopt a comprehensive poverty reduction plan with legislative targets and timelines? And what are the highest priority actions your government will take to address the root causes of poverty in BC? And we're starting with Duncan again.
This is something that's one of the primary motivating factors for me. I don't know if I mentioned in my introduction, I got into this race very, very late, and almost didn't because I was not sure that there was any point. You know, I think seeing all these people out here is really affirming, and I'm hopeful it'll be reflected when it comes time to go to the polls. But at the last election, only 54% of people in our riding voted, and we are. It's an amazing province. I was so happy to move back here to raise my kids with my wife and to revisit the BC that I grew up in. But it wasn't here. I mean, we're still happy we came back, but it isn't the same. It is definitely a changed place, and I don't know how those that can affect change with regard to the most vulnerable in our society do not do it. And you know, this is something working in education. I see not just the term, but I see the faces. You know, when you're in schools and you see the kids that are most directly impacted by this. You know, this all comes back to again the raison d'etre for me being here is that there is a better way forward. You're hearing all these great ideas. Very few of these things are ever going to see the light of day because somebody's going to win, and it's going to be 4 years of dictatorship because that's ultimately what happens in a Westminster model. That's the policy that you're going to get. And you know, in terms of some of the great ideas that you're hearing from Justin or from Samson, and even some of the different ideas that the NDP have versus the Liberals, it's either back and forth pendulum swing, or it's never seeing the light of day, and we're never going to get anywhere. And the light is red. So I'll talk about that some more after.
Thank you. So over the last number of years, the NDP has put forward 5 times in the legislature legislation to do a poverty reduction plan, and the BC Liberals have voted against it every single time. Right now, under Christy Clark's watch, 1 in 5 children currently live in poverty. It's completely unacceptable, and we need to do better. I know that in Revelstoke, this community has done a lot of work on poverty reduction, a lot of work on livable wages. I think this city is actually ahead of the rest of the province, and you probably have a lot of the solutions, a lot of the things that should be looked at. And I do commend this community for taking a leadership role and moving much faster than the provincial or federal government. And I think it's the job of these governments to catch up and support and help, not to hold you back. And unfortunately, that seems to be what's happening. And I do agree that sometimes the pendulum shifts. I think after 16 years, it's time for it to shift again and go back. And I don't pretend that it's a perfect system, but boy, we sure can do better than we're doing right now. So one of the really tangible plans of BC NDP is to increase income assistance immediately and to get rid of the bus clawback that you might have heard about, and to put some serious efforts into tackling homelessness and working on child protection and just ensuring that we really do care about those who are vulnerable. And I just don't understand how we can say that we have a leading economy and that everything is great when so many people are struggling. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, I don't have a party, so to directly answer the question, I can't say that my party will create a strategy, but I personally would support one for sure. I see a growing gap between the rich and the poor in our province, and it's a very real thing. And there's a lot of solutions that are coming forward, and the BC Liberals have not done a good job on this at all, and they've shut down quite a few of those ideas. I'd like to see the $10 a day child care program. I think this is a matter of allowing people to solve their own problems. The NDP have this one right, in my opinion, and you want people to be able to take care of themselves. I want them to be able to take care of themselves. You want to get them off social assistance, that's how it's going to happen. And the amount of money that will come in from the new income created by those people working could potentially pay for the program as well. On top of that, there does need to be increases in welfare and disability as well. Welfare hasn't changed now in 10 years. We're sitting at $610, and I don't know how you can survive on $610, at least not comfortably. I think there needs to be some serious change on here, and obviously creating a strategy is a good spot to start, but I think this needs to be looked at as a much bigger issue than just the very poorest of our poor. This is growing into a bigger issue where it's affecting even those who may normally be considered closer to a middle-class life, where they can't afford a home, they can't afford to buy anything, and they potentially never will at the way things are going right now. And I think we need to look at a strategy to try and help people get forward. And I have a few ideas here, but I see my lights turning yellow, so.
In 30 seconds.
Okay. Well, I'll go for it. But I would like to see us tackle affordable housing in a bit of a different way. I would like to see us go and try and make more owners rather than renters out of houses, and I would like to see us try to work on a much lower budget than $173,000 per unit that the BC Liberals are currently spending to build a single unit of affordable housing. I think you could do this for a lot closer to $30,000 to $75,000, and I'd like to see that.
Poverty is something that affects every one of us, whether we are rich or whether we're poor. We should not have a working class that can't make ends meet. The BC government, the Green Party is committed to seeing a living wage instead of a minimum wage. We want to see it across the province where people can live even if they're just making ends meet. We also need to throw out there a basic income pilot project, selecting a town and giving them a basic income of $1,000 a month per se. And this has been tried across Canada, and the results have been all positive. We've seen a decrease in crime, housing has been mitigated, affordable housing has been mitigated, and people just seem overall more happy and less likely to turn to addiction. The BC Greens are also committed to having affordable housing, putting up 4,000 affordable housing units per year, because you can't have a job, or it's harder to have a job if you don't have a place to live. This plan and all the other plans the BC Party wishes to implement will work through all lines of government, from provincial to federal to municipal. Thank you.
There's no excuse for poverty. I spent my entire life working with kids, or most of my life working with kids, and anybody in poverty we need to help. There's no question about that. But I'll tell you what I believe, and this is what my party believes, and it's working. And I'm just going to use a quote from my colleague down here that will never see the light of day. I'm going to show you something that's seen the light of day, and just very recently, is that the way out of poverty for people is a job. The way out of poverty for people is to work, is to feel like they're actually contributing to something. And you go, well, how's that going to do? I'm going to give you a specific example. We have what is known as the Single Parents Initiative. We have over 6,000 single parents who are on the welfare treadmill right now involved in this program. 200 have graduated. So when they're on social assistance or on their welfare, and 85% of them are mothers, single moms on welfare that don't want to be on welfare anymore, that want to improve their condition for their kids. They want to do that. So what we're doing, we're giving them free child care. We're giving them, keeping them on social assistance. We're allowing them for transportation costs for their kids, and we're keeping them on social assistance until they graduate. And there's 200 young women today who are bums that have graduated out of this program who are now in jobs, middle-class jobs, doing a great job and supporting their kids. That's what comes when you have a strong economy. That's what comes when you help people help themselves. That's what the BC Liberals are doing, and that's something I'm incredibly proud of, because these young men and women are now looking at their kids. They're looking at your kids and their kids, and they're saying, I support you, and I believe in you, and now I'm an example for you. So that's a program that we're doing because we have a strong economy.
Next question. Revelstoke is developing, or has been having an increasing problem with rats in recent years. In Alberta, the government has implemented a rat control and implementation program since 1950. Do you think that your government, if elected, should initiate a provincial rat control and education program following Alberta's lead? Starting with Gerry.
So first of all, a little tongue-in-cheek, I think there's some rats at Victoria we should get rid of first. I realize that this is kind of an up-and-coming issue in Revelstoke, and it's really interesting. I also have to share my own personal phobia. Some people are scared of snakes, some people are scared of spiders. I am scared of rats. I don't like them. So I'm with you on trying to control them or get rid of them. As far as the differences, my understanding is that there is some differences in climate between portions of BC and most of Alberta. So it might not be possible to aim towards the goal of a completely rat-free BC. But I think that there are some tools that could be used in this region, in this riding, in the mountain communities, and in the climate we have, with the right resources, education, commitments, and funding. I think that we really could tackle this problem. And there's no question that there's human health risk and a lot of nasty stuff that can come with these critters. And I really hope that I don't have any nightmares tonight, since I've been talking about it so much. Thank you.
Okay, well, I would gladly like help and work with the residents of Revelstoke to solve this issue and to bring any concerns that you guys have to Victoria. But as far as my party again creating a plan, that's again an issue I don't exactly have. If we have a problem, I would gladly like to work with residents and try and solve it. And I think that's kind of how we should be dealing with all of our problems. All of our problems should be dealt with in a manner that is a community-based plan and a strategy meant for everybody. And I don't have a whole lot to say on this issue right now. This one's definitely caught me a tiny bit off guard, but I believe we should always be trying to work together.
This, I would say, is the most complicated issue and the most difficult question to answer we've been asked tonight. I'd say the biggest thing we need to work towards is funding and supporting local governments, working with the mayor here in Revelstoke, and working with the people to find a proper strategy to deal with this rat issue. This is not an issue we face anywhere else in the riding. Maybe a bit in Briscoe, but otherwise it's pretty relative to here, sad to say. I would say when you elect me as your MLA, I would say I will work with the governments, local governments personally, to deal with this issue. Thank you.
Well, where I live up in Dutch Creek, we've got some pack rat problems. My solution is 2 cats. My neighbors have those problems, I don't. They take care of it. But it is, I know I've talked to the mayor just recently as yesterday, and certainly 2 ladies have popped into our campaign office about this rat issue. Rats have been in British Columbia since the 1800s. They've been here forever. they're not going anywhere. But what we need to do is to collectively and as an MLA to work with the local population through education programs, to work with your local mayor and council, because they're everywhere. And you know, at the end of the day, it's all about education, making sure that your yards are cleaned properly, making sure that those things that rats like are not around, making sure that all of those things are taken care of, and it requires education. So it's an issue here, and the two women that came into the campaign office yesterday were out of their mind crazy about this thing. And I get that. So I think from a provincial government's perspective, the Minister of Environment is very aware of this. She's had those conversations. And it's about collaboration. It's about sitting down and working and talking with people to try to figure this out together. And that's what's going to have to happen here, to reduce the numbers. You're not going to get rid of them. You're not.
I'll be honest, I had no idea there was a rat problem here. As I said, I work in Revelstoke and with a variety of people here, and I had never heard of this before. I think, without knowing what everyone said, because I ran to the washroom after nervously drinking this bottle of water, that there's potentially similar situation elsewhere in the riding with I think a necessarily new categorization of animal in our province. There are animals in urban areas, whether you call them habituated or urbanized. There needs to be a way for communities to deal with them in a manner that's safe and effective for everyone concerned, and also takes into account the animal itself. You know, whether it's deer in Invermere or Kimberley, or whether it's rats in Revelstoke, these are things that I think could be better addressed if legislation was altered to acknowledge the fact that these habituated animals need to be dealt with separately than the simple dichotomy between domestic animals and wildlife. And that empowerment, I think, will lead to solutions, because I think everyone agrees it's a complicated problem, but everything we're dealing with sitting at this table is complicated, and it just comes down to getting the right people in the right place with the latitude to do the right things.
Next question. Projects such as the LNG terminal and BC Hydro Site C generating station pose tricky questions for governments. Do you think that governments can sensibly balance their potential environmental costs against the employment and economic benefits that stem from their construction? And we start with Justin.
It's a tough balance. It always is when it comes to looking at the environment and looking at jobs. It leads to a lot of hard decisions, and a lot of decisions where people are very, very, very split on what they think. For me, I've spent quite a bit of time looking at these things and trying to really consider what is best on it. And as far as the LNG goes, I think it's an amazing opportunity, and we need to make sure that we're there to take that opportunity. There's too much money there to not be going after it, and our government at this point has invested so much that it wouldn't be worth turning around. I'm a little concerned about some of the things that they want to do with LNG, though, and I think that some of it's a little counterintuitive, such as switching the ferries over to LNG and switching any fleet vehicles or company vehicles over to LNG. I think we're on the verge of being able to do that electrically, and in fact, over in other parts of the world, they're already running electric ferries off of batteries that were built in BC. And I would like to see those be brought here, especially for a lot of the short-term ferries that we use. It could produce a lot of money for us, a lot of jobs for us here, and I would like to see us focusing more on the future and less on fossil fuel. Even if it is an improved fossil fuel, it is still creating carbon, and 20% is still 20%. So setting us up so that we can only ever get to 20% of what we're currently at is just not a great way to go about it.
Stand up for this one. We are going to be paying out of the nose for Site C. At the moment, we have spent nearly $2 billion just without even constructing anything. By the end, it'll cost us $16 billion. That's not even considering the fact that we will not need this energy until 2035. Until that point, we will be selling that power, that electricity, for a deficit. We will be losing money for every, I forget the measurement of electricity, pound of electricity we sell to the States. Megawatts, there we go, thank you. As for LNG, the price of natural gas has plummeted. It is simply not, yes, it is a short-term job creator, but for the short term, we will be paying for it in the long term. It is one step back when we should be taking 2 steps forward. It's keeping us on natural gas, something that we need to be stepping away from in general, as well as we are putting the stuff back into the ground. We cannot sell it. It is not valuable enough. There's no market for it. And let's not even talk about the environmental implications both of these issues cause. For Site C, that'll be 100 kilometers worth of agricultural land, wind power, sunlight, that will be flooded. And we'll lose money on it. Anyways, thank you all. I'll pass this on to Doug.
Thank you. LNG industry is alive and well in British Columbia. You can laugh as much as you want, Gerry. It's the truth. We've got wood fiber LNG is opening a plant. There's another one online. It's alive and well. And if you look at the 2008 to present time, the whole world energy industry went into the tank. It's still there. But the question is it environmentally sound, and do we protect the environment? The Premier has made it very clear, whether it's pipelines or LNG, British Columbia is going to be protected with her 5 conditions. So we have to have adequate spill responses when it comes to oil, both marine and terrestrial responses. We've got to make sure First Nations are involved in this. We've got to make sure that British Columbians are considered first in terms of their jobs. We have to make sure that we get a fair share in this. So that's either LNG or pipelines. But I'll tell you what, it's alive and well in this, and no matter what anybody tells you, is that there's 2, one online and another one that's coming online, and wood fiber LNG is actually working, and it's employing people, it's about jobs, it's about driving the economy forward, and it's about protecting the environment. So we've got all of that covered.
Who here remembers the Fast Ferry fiasco? Okay, the Fast Ferry fiasco is Site C. Site C is this is the pendulum swing. The NDP Fast Ferry fiasco. Now we're gonna have Site C. Site C is insane. I'm with Samson on this. I think this is absolutely crazy. At a time when other jurisdictions, Washington State, for example, are taking dams down and reclaiming the natural environment, we're putting up a monstrosity. This comes back again to what we're prioritizing, how we're assessing, and ultimately where we're leveraging synergies. I know Gerry was with me. He said right up until I said generate revenue from healthcare. I didn't say generate revenue from healthcare off British Columbians. We need to look at what our liabilities are. We need to look at where the future is. This is already a province that people flock to for tourism, for international education. People could flock here for healthcare as well. Why aren't we looking at where we spend the most money and saying, how can we provide those services at the level that we should and could, and leverage it to our benefit? And instead of looking into to conventional resource sectors, soon to be antiquated resource sectors, we should be looking to the future. We should be looking at what they're doing in places like Dubai with healthcare, not looking at what they're doing in places like Texas with natural resource development. There's so much potential here. Again, the human resources we have, the natural resources we have, not the ones in the ground, the ones all around. People will come here and pay to be here for all of the things we can offer them without doing anything like this. I'm absolutely against Site C. And I don't think we're for natural gas.
So 4 years ago, Mr. Clovechok stood in probably this room, stood in this community, and spouted off Christy Clark's lines. I don't know if anyone remembers 4 years ago. We were going to have 100,000 jobs from LNG. We were going to be debt-free. You know what's been created in LNG so far? One job. Gordon Wilson, $150,000 a year. That's the one job Christy Clark's created with LNG. It's a fantasy, just like the LNG Prosperity Fund. Fantasy fund, general revenue, our tax dollars put into a fund. It's not going to happen. It's not real. We have to be honest about this. I agree with some of the other comments. Our future is not going to be in fossil fuels. Long term, it's not. Absolutely not. And when you look at the Kinder Morgan project, tanker traffic, 7-fold increase. It's not a question of if we have a spill on our coast. It's a question of when. And all of our traditional industries, tourism, fishery, they're going to be gone. Absolutely gone. So we're going to take all the risk with no jobs. The pipeline doesn't create jobs. Yes, there's construction, but once it's operating, it's not employing anyone. But we're going to take on all the risk and no benefits. It makes no sense at all. So I sat on the Union of British Columbia Municipalities Executive, and we looked at land-based spill response plans. One thing I'll give Christy Clark credit for, she's really great at coming up with slogans. World leading. Well, we went and looked at that. Do you know what? BC doesn't even compare to our neighbors. Alaska, Washington State, our neighbors have better spill response plans. How can you be world leading when our neighbors are doing a better job? Never mind the rest of the world. We didn't have the budget to even look at the rest of the world. We only looked at our neighbors, and we're already failing. So ladies and gentlemen, we need to focus on jobs in our communities. Small businesses create jobs. That's where I see people employed in Invermere. That's where I see people employed in Revelstoke. I don't know anyone in this room that's going to be employed by LNG, and I don't think people should have to leave this community to go find work. And we need to not just jobs, but I think we should be focusing on careers. Quantity instead of quality.
Next question. Last winter, BC Hydro's low threshold looking at me as if I missed somebody. No, it's okay. Last winter, BC Hydro's low threshold two-tier pricing system penalized people who heat using electricity as they were faced with unreasonably high electricity bills. Do you see this as a problem, and if so, what would your party plan to do about it? We're starting with Samson.
BC Hydro.
Sorry.
Do you see these high rates as a problem, and if so, what do your party plan to do about it?
Thank you all. I will hopefully get back with an answer. Thank you.
When it comes to prices in BC Hydro, this was a tough winter. There's no question about that. We have electrical heat in our floors, and when we got our first hydro bill this year, we decided we were going to wear slippers. And I say that not in jest, it's the truth. It was a cold winter, and those rates are up. What I think is really important that people understand is that as far as electrical costs, we are the 5th lowest in North America, the 3rd lowest in Canada. Our pricing is low comparatively to other people. Now, it doesn't help you I know it doesn't help you in your on your checkbook side and so on and so forth. But what's really important that you understand is that we are when your prices go up, you have to remember that for here in Revelstoke 6 just got revamped. Micah Dam, these things cost money to fix and to rehabilitate and to replace. So the infrastructure costs that are associated with BC Hydro are there. It costs money to do that. And I'll tell you what, something very, very, very honestly, is that during the 90s in the NDP, they never invested in anything in infrastructure, and we are still paying today for those infrastructure costs that came back from the 90s. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a fact.
I can't believe what my BC Hydro bill looks like every month or every other month. It's shocking. It's embarrassing, I think, in the context of sitting up here and talking about what could be and what should be, and ultimately it's symptomatic again. You know, whether we're talking, it's impossible to talk about poverty reduction versus job creation, or in the context of job creation, without talking about cost of living. It's expensive to live in British Columbia. I tell people that I meet in different places when I travel with my job that I'm from BC, and they say, what? Bring cash. Yeah, it's embarrassing. It's not funny. It's embarrassing. We live in a province that is the butt of a joke for the rest of this country and for people elsewhere. I don't just hear it in Canada. It's expensive to live here, and it shouldn't be. Again, it's an amazing place to live. It's full of amazing people living here, and for whatever reason, despite all these phenomenal people in this phenomenal place, we're sitting here talking about a population that's got a significant portion living below the poverty line, about a job boom that somehow left our region behind, about affordable housing, you know, in a time and in a place where all these other things are on the same table, and we're supposed to sit down and somehow eat that dinner. It doesn't make any sense, and I will, when I wrap up, hopefully make everything I'm trying to communicate about what we can do to make this work better make sense at that point. Because again, this is just symptomatic. That this is one of these things that doesn't need to be this way, never should have been this way, and it's lurking there. This is going to jump up and bite us, whether we're talking about demographics and an aging population in healthcare, or whether we're talking about debt that we can't see. You can talk about balanced budgets all day, but the debt we can't see is going to catch us.
All right. So there's a couple of key reasons why our hydro rates are so out of control. And first and foremost, the BC NDP's promise is to freeze the rates and to take a year to get to the bottom of it and look and see what's going on. One of the things that's happened with BC Hydro is it's full of some patronage appointments and probably a little top-heavy on the administration side. But the other thing that's happening, and this is directly attributable to the BC Liberals, and this is something that is far beyond just a pendulum swinging. This is something that was absolutely criminal, and that's the sale of our rivers and the independent power projects. The contractual obligations which BC Hydro is forced to buy this power that we don't need at times of the year when we don't need it is costing us millions of dollars a year. I believe the figure this year is, in one case, we paid $8 million not to take power from some IPPs because we simply couldn't handle it. That's crazy, absolutely crazy. Site C, as we've talked about, it has the potential to bankrupt this province. It has the potential to lose that credit rating that Christy Clark's little soldier over here bragged about. We could lose our credit rating over Site C. The debt that is piling up in BC Hydro is astronomical. And at the same time that all this is happening, Christy Clark and her crew are taking dividends out of BC Hydro in order to put it into general revenue to tell us that we have a balanced budget. That's not a balanced budget. That's bogus.
Okay, so this is an issue that we hear a lot about, and we hear this right across the entire riding, and I'm sure that every person sitting here who's knocked on the door has heard somebody say this to them. BC Hydro rates are definitely going up, and our 10-year rates plan that the BC Liberals like to say has kept rates low. I don't think that's the consensus coming from constituents. I think obviously a good spot to start would be to stop taking the dividends from BC Hydro when they clearly can't afford them. It's $17.9 billion in debt and growing. They shouldn't be trying to pay profits to the province to go and fill our coffers and give us a little extra money to, balance the budget, which is a statement that actually I'm getting really tired of hearing about the balanced budget, because over the last 4 balanced budgets, our deficit increased by $9 billion. And over the next 3, it's supposed to increase by $11 billion more. And that's coming right out of the balanced budget 2017 estimates. That's their own number. That's not me speculating that. That's not including what's going to happen with the forestry industry and the softwood lumber dispute. So I think definitely if you want to get your rate lower, I think probably getting rid of this government would be a good place to start.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, our goal is to try and wrap up by 9, and it's just about 1:45, and I think the rest of what we have planned for the evening will take about that 15 minutes. So that's the end of the question period. And first of all, we have, first of all, I want to thank all the people who sent in questions. We had over 25 questions sent in by various people, and as you can see, we had to cut down on the number that we asked tonight. And anyway, I thank all of those who took the effort to send in the questions.
The last 4 years by working together, and it's about the person in many ways and shapes and forms. So we've heard a lot of things tonight. Some of them are compelling. There's no question about it. But I'll tell you what, this province is #1 in Canada. No matter what anybody tells you, we're #1 in Canada. We have the only AAA credit rating in this country. That means something. And we didn't get here because we didn't have a plan. We've got a plan. And my colleague over here and his leader does not have a plan. They don't know where they're going. And he talks about being Alberta. Alberta's fighting with Ontario to be last. In the 1990s, this province was dead last in everything. Today, it's #1. I cannot believe for 1 minute this province would want to go backwards instead of moving forwards. So think about that when you're voting.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank you all for coming out here. I would like to say 3 things before I end. 1, I make a promise to you. Well, no, before that. I have made many mistakes throughout my life and throughout my campaign. I can swear upon that. And I can promise you I will make many more throughout my political career. But my promise is that I will listen to your concerns. Today was an incredibly, very interesting event today. I learned a lot, not only about the concerns of many of you, but also the concerns of the 4 other candidates. The NDP and the Liberals have both had their chance at power. We can see how well the NDP did by the fact that the Liberals have won for the last 16 years. We can see how well the Liberals have done by the fact that only 54% of people came out to vote in the last election. That's British Columbia-wide, very low turnout. And only 40% of the population actually vote Liberals. That's not a representative government. That is a government of the few, and they will not listen to most of our concerns. I lack experience, but I also know that the best way to gain experience is to go out and try. You can't learn how to build a house from a book. So this is me going out and trying to meet the people, build a career, and hopefully bring your concerns to the government. Thank you.
So my public speaking is a bit of a work in progress. I'm not the best at it yet, but my commitment to constituents is not a work in progress. I have an idea of how to represent people. I have a plan to be able to reach as many people as possible, if not hopefully everybody. I'm happy to see this many people out here, but honestly, I would like to see more. I'm disappointed by the numbers of people turning out to vote at 46.4% of voters not bothering to cast a vote in our last election in our area. That's completely unacceptable. I think that they're not here because they're not happy with politics for a large number. I think a little bit they didn't know. I mean, walking around the community, I ended up inviting quite a few people here today. So obviously, not everybody just is apathetic about it, but I want to help you. I want to work with you guys to bring your voice to Victoria. And I'll conquer my speaking issues. That'll get out of the way. But I just hope that you guys can give me a chance.
I'd like to first and foremost thank the media consortium for organizing this and our facilitator. They've have done a very great job tonight, and again, thanks to everyone for attending. It's great to see the turnout, and I'm glad we had to put more chairs out. It's always a good sign. So a couple of quick points that haven't really been touched on, but the NDP has some really exciting platforms on $10 a day childcare and on affordable housing. There's a lot of other pieces. And despite what you might hear, it's fully costed, and we're going to pay for it by increasing the income tax rates for the most wealthy, the people earning over $150,000 a year, and by increasing corporate income tax for large corporations. But we're actually proposing to decrease the income tax rate for small businesses. And that's my background. I spent so much of my life in small business. But over my time in small business, what I came to discover was that the Christy Clark and the BC Liberals, they don't care about small business. The HST, some of the things that have happened, this wasn't for small business. This is about big business. And when Christy Clark's person over here mentions being number one, yes, BC's number one if you're wealthy and well-connected, but everyone else is getting left behind. We need a government that's going to work for you. We need an MLA that's going to work for you, that's not just going to spout off the party stuff. And I've spent the last 15 years of my life, I'm only 34 years old, I've spent, so almost, I'm going to be 35, all right, I'm getting old. So I spent basically 15 years of my life working in local government, working in small business, and I want the opportunity to represent this region of Victoria and to work for you and to represent the values that are important to you. Thank you.
I too would like to thank the organizers, especially given my personal circumstance. They only found out I existed as a candidate about 24 hours ago. To reframe what I've been trying to communicate throughout the night, the overarching theme of my campaign, I have the barren table in the back corner there that has a single sign on it that looks not unlike this, because what I'm trying to run, for lack of a better word, is a net zero campaign. I'm not fundraising. I'm not spending anything. I'm going to drive here. I'm going to eat some food on the way home. Personal expenses only. The medium has to be the message. All these big signs, all this partisan politicking, this doesn't align with the analog of a job interview. How many people put a sign on their lawn and say, "Hire me to work at the 7-Eleven or the Tim Hortons"? It's not how you do it. You don't emphasize one set of skills: public speaking, cajoling in an attempt to get a job that needs a totally different set of skills. So, net zero campaign, three-pronged approach to democracy reform. Campaign finance reform, we absolutely need it. In a province where we've got people who are living in poverty, people who can't donate to parties to influence them in any sort of policy direction, nobody should be giving more than $10, and nobody should need it. If you vote for me, you're going to be voting for a new way of doing this that isn't corrupted or corruptible. The campaign finance reform, there'll be electoral reform. I'm not going to have enough time to get into that. And then ultimately, we need institutional reform. Nobody in this room, unless you happen to live in Kelowna, voted for Christy Clark, and yet she's the most powerful person in this province. We need to restructure our democracy to make it representative and responsive. Everything else will flow from that. Thank you very much for having me tonight.
That's it, ladies and gentlemen. I want to first of all thank all the candidates for coming and putting their positions forward, and also congratulate them for throwing their hats in the ring and running in this election. It's a huge commitment, and being an MLA is a big job. Whoever gets it. I also want to thank the media sponsors again, and thanks to all of the audience who have come here. You're key to a good event like this, so thank you all for coming. And thanks to Sean Aqualine, our excellent timekeeper down there. I think I might have fallen asleep a couple times there and missed that red light. So anyway, and just reminders about the advanced polls are April 29th and 30th, as well as May 3 to 6. And they're all at the community center here from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. each day. And election day, of course, is May the 9th. Vote as you like, but make sure you get out there and vote and get your neighbors and friends out there too. Thank you all for coming.
I